Let's start. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Prerana, your host and moderator for today, and part of the ECOP training and mentoring task team. So, for those recently becoming familiar with the Early Career Ocean Professional Network, this is a program at the heart of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development and was endorsed by the UN Ocean Decade as a network program in 2021. Our mission is to elevate and strengthen the diverse perspectives of new generations of ocean professionals through a collective voice, ensuring that knowledge is transferred between experienced and early career ocean professionals to promote ocean sustainability for the ocean we want. As part of the knowledge, we want to share among future professionals, and we developed a series of webinars that aim to train and inform this community of ocean lovers. And today we have an exciting and super interesting webinar. It's our episode number 22, and it's dedicated to managing our data. So today our speakers are going to present an interactive workshop on data management in ocean science. So whether you're working with oceanographic data or just looking to improve your data handling skills, this session will provide essential insights on, say, research data lifecycle, fair data principles, key data resources for ocean professionals, and how to create a data management plan. So I would like to remind all the audience that you can write your questions or comments in the Q&A section or in the chat. I was hoping that if before we continue, we would like to break the ice with the first small poll to just get to know everybody. So I'll just share a poll with everybody, and then you guys could take a few minutes to answer them. Let's say we can have like a minute or so.
The poll is already launched, so feel free to fill out the poll.
I think having these polls really help us gauge our audience based on and finding out how best we could cater to the needs of ECOPs. So I can see mostly everybody, most of them are ECOPs. And a lot of folks working in academia and the non-governmental organization space. Nice. Wow, we have people joining in from East Africa, from Europe, North America, and Asia, and a mix of students, bachelors, masters, data analysts. Okay. This is interesting, right? We have people from biology, chemistry, oceanography, policy as well, citizen science. And yes, everybody is looking for more and more experience in data management. Perfect. Yes, thank you so much for sharing your information. This really helps. So let's begin with introductions of our first speaker. So today we have Mariana de Botton. Mariana is a climate physicist from Utrecht University and works as an environmental technician. She's passionate about ocean conservation and climate adaptation and mitigation projects for coastal zones. She serves on the ECOP Dutch Node Steering Committee. Additionally, she is a deputy director of communications at Climate Cardinals and supporting global climate accessibility through Spanish translation. And then our second guest today is Fran Meyer. Fran is an oceanographer with vast international experience in marine research and cartography. She specializes in coastal morphodynamics, biophysical chemical analysis, and innovative in situ monitoring solutions. She's passionate about data management and sharing, and she values interdisciplinary collaboration. And her expertise is in Python, MATLAB, GIS, scientific communication, and project management. So, with these introductions, I would love for Mariana to take over with her presentation. I will just start sharing the screen. Perfect. Yes. Take it away.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So as Prerana mentioned, I'm Mariana de Botton, and together with Fran Meyer, we are from the ECOP Dutch Node, and we will be presenting to you this data management workshop. Fran?
Yes, so I'll take over from here. It's great to see everyone connecting. Great to present to you this this workshop with Mariana. And for this first part, Mariana and I are gonna break down from talking about data in general, why data management is important, then walk you through the research data lifecycle, so you're able to follow how the data management plan is formed. And we will talk about the fair and care principles that are really important to implement when you're thinking about handling your data. Then we'll have about a 10-minute break, and then we'll go on to the second part of this workshop, which is an interactive part, which will help you to put in practice what we've talked about in a very engaging activity. And for this, Prerana and Mariana are gonna take over. Then we'll go back, gather and make some final remarks, get your questions, and close the workshop. So to start from the base, when we talk about data management plan, when we talk about data in the context of marine science, we talk about all kinds of data. You know, it can be, of course, from zeros to ones to different numerical values, can be images as well. And we're really talking about in situ data that you can collect from satellite imagery, or go out, if you're lucky enough, you can go out in the field and collect your own data. Or from modeling, which is increasingly happening, of course, and which poses the problem of data storage, of course, which is another topic, but also how to handle your data properly from the start to the end. And this pool of data is really the base that you start from. It's the foundation of your house. And it's important to have a view all the way from the base to the action that you want to take from this data. And in marine data, we talk about physical data, for example, for seawater temperature, salinity, chemical data for nutrients, pH, can be biological data. I see that we have biologists in the webinar. So if you want to look at your ecosystem, you might be looking at plankton or fish populations, and geological data. So this is very important, and I want to take an example from the Brilliant Blue Challenge, which is an educational program that is a UN Ocean Decade program that involves young people from 12 to 18-year-old that all around the world participated, presented a project to answer a problematic, a marine science problematic. And I want to talk about this a second because the winning team from last year was a team from Colombia, and their incentive was to create a device that collects in situ data in their local coastal community to empower the community. Because without the data, it's impossible for them to be able to prove that, for example, the exploitation that is happening close to their community is impacting their ecosystem. So of course the data is validated, and this is say a starting project, but the example that I want to take is that there is many application for handling your data, but one that is very important is the base to get an information, protect yourself. So from this data, for example, you withdraw different information. For example, if you're working with the coastal reef ecosystem conservation, you might be looking at seawater temperature. You collect all kinds of data throughout the years, satellite data or in situ data if you're looking enough to go out in the field. From this, you withdraw information to look at different trends and decipher from climatologies, from seasonality, and you can look at all the different variables to get knowledge on what is the effect of the changing climate on your coral reefs, for example. There are studies that came out that said that some corals adapt actually better to the rising temperature than we thought. So we need to adapt the prediction that we have accordingly. Of course, it's not a majority, but it's important to have a good overview. Then this gives us wisdom to be able to treat the data, and this is what enables us to take action. And so it's important that gathering this data to build upon, which is growing and growing in volume, we need the right plan to look through the data from start to the end. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we talk about data management, we really have to be mindful of data entropy or inducing chaos in our data, because maybe at the start of a project, you may be thinking, oh, it's okay, I only have a few data. I don't need to take so many notes on the documentation or even have everything written out because I know how to handle my data, but this can quickly become unmanageable, which will render your data unshareable with others. And this can really hindrance the outreach of your data. For example, if you use the wrong formats that are not so standard, that can create problems for compatibility with others. If you don't document the data well enough, then the data cannot be used simply. Or if you restrict the access, then obviously the others are not able to use your data. So for this, the management plan and following the research data lifecycle, actually at least having it in mind, is important to ensure that you have data quality, that you have reliable data that are consistent and you can share. This will help you to influence the decision making in the right way, empower your community, and maximize the value of your data, because often you get public funding for doing research for your data. It's important to think of it long term, even past the research project and the funding that you get for your own project, which will give you a long-term preservation for your data. And at the end, we get historical data that are useful for different kind of research. Next slide, please. Thank you. So it's important when you think of your data to follow the research data lifecycle. And this gives you key information on how to, it's kind of a way to remember. There are things that maybe you don't think about at every stage, but that are important to consider from the start. And so there are different steps, and the good thing is that they are very standard. Even if you work in handling medical data, ocean data, it's very standard. So you have a lot of information, you have a lot of templates that can help you, a lot of resources online that you can modify according to your needs. And starting from for this life cycle from planning, which is the base, is really the start, and it's an important step that is adaptable throughout the whole planning of your data life cycle. Then, of course, once you've planned out everything, you go collect your data, process it, analyze it, then make sure it's preserved, and then you publish it, share it, and this enables the data to be reused. And so to start walking us through the data lifecycle, Mariana will take over for the first few steps.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Fran. First, we're going to go into phase one. As Fran has mentioned before, the data management plan is going to be a live document. So you will have, let's say, your guideline of how are the different steps of the research data lifecycle will go. But it's important to know that this is something that can be updated. You can encounter certain issues in the meantime that will have to make you reassess your planning, but it's really good to have this baseline. So what does planning mean on the first go? First, we need to define research goal, data needs, and collection methods. For this, we will create a solid plan. First, we need to ask ourselves, why are we collecting this data? And how are we collecting this data? So if we don't have a clear statement of what our research goal is, it's going to be difficult to then know which kinds of data we're going to need and then being able to make our data management plan. It's very important that your statement is clear so you can relate it to your data needs. Then you need to identify metadata standards and storage formats. This is very important because metadata is basically like the nutritional label of your data. So it will help others understand what it is, where it came from, and how to access it and how to use it. This considers parts like using the right types of formats early. So maybe in which type of data do you need to work on, but maybe to making it open, which formats you're going to be using in the end. So, to put an example with the corals that we had, if we're thinking of like a research goal, in first defining, maybe we say, okay, I want to think about coral bleaching. Which variables do I need to think about? Maybe I need to think about temperature, salinity, light exposure, and where is this data going to come from? Maybe it's going to come from some satellite image, maybe from in situ measurements. After that, the metadata would be where it was collected. So let's say maybe it was collected in the Gulf of Mexico. Who was the creator of this data? So who went out in field, measure this data, the dates that this data was collected, what was the location like latitude and longitude, what are the variables of the data, so these that we talked about, what are the units that we're using, and the file formats. Again, the metadata will basically ensure that the data set is understandable even 10 years later, And again, there's small parts of it that are very important to take into consideration, like which software was used, because it could be that we have a specific software coming from the measuring machine that we need to be aware of, and also which version of this software was used, because this would complicate things in how we're considering this data. From here comes our data management plan. And this plan should also include a structure and storage, and a backup plan. So basically, again, what is going to be the structure of this data? How are we going to preserve this data? If maybe your research group has its own server, if there's going to be a copy living in your local computer, but maybe you also have to put something else on the cloud. If maybe there's a repository for the university or for an institution that you need to be working your data with. And also, what is going to be the backup schedule? So if you're going to back it up every week, if you're going to back it up every day, it really depends on what the necessities are and also how much space you have. Then it's really important to take into account the roles and responsibilities. What does this mean? It could be that the only person that accesses this data is you, but it could be that it's also your supervisor, or maybe it's a data set that is shared within all of your peers in your research group. So very important to know who's going to be responsible for the backups, who's going to handle the data, and how does this look like. Also for the legal and ethical requirements, we need to think, for example, in the medical field, sometimes we are having sensitive data, so names, maybe some medical information, age, addresses, we don't know. So for example, you have to be very careful on how you're gonna anonymize this data to be able to protect the people that are providing you with this data as well. Or I don't know, if we think about bathymetry. Bathymetry for us could be something very normal, but it also is very sensitive data because of the security reasons it implies for governments. So that's why we need to take that into account. And as Fran mentioned before, how we're going to share it and how we're going to preserve it long term. So if maybe I'm doing backups on the cloud, and that's just going to be my backup system, where is my final data going to live? Is it going to live in an open repository somewhere? Is part of it gonna live within my research group because it's still being used? Or is it gonna live, outside in a different repository? So that's important to take into account. Next slide. Now we have to think about how we're gonna collect the data. So once we have this plan, we have to move into the data collection, and that's where the quality control will start. It's very important that you use standardized protocols for the sampling. What does this mean? For example, for each field, sometimes there's certain protocols that are used to be able to sample this data. And if you want to maybe sample your data in one place, but it will be a very small data set that you want to incorporate into other data sets that you found, maybe you can look in what is the standard way to present this data so you can put it all together and everyone's happy. For this, you should always document the data sources, the time that you took this data, the location, and also the measurement technique. This can seem a little bit obvious, but let's think about what's happening in the US right now. If some databases are being taken away, and maybe that was data that I'm relying on for my research, but it's not online anymore, at least when I'm trying to publish, when I'm trying to do the analysis or share with other people, can say like, hey, I downloaded this data on this date, on this time, and this is when it was still available. So then you have traceability and validity to the data that you're working with. Then it's important to check for calibration and quality control. What does this mean? Basically, we're still not fully manipulating the data, it's basically giving it a look. So maybe we're going to check if there's duplicates of the data, if there are some missing values, and this should also be kind of part of your routine. So as I mentioned, we're not manipulating the data yet, but we're just looking for gaps, weird values, maybe we have some outliers, and just making sense of the time or the location or the value itself. And again, the reliable data starts with careful documentation and quality control during the collection of it. Then we come to the processing of the data. So after we collect all of this data, we need to clean it up and prepare it for our analysis. So first, we're gonna start now with a data cleaning. So first, we did this very basic quality control, and here is when we are gonna start making decisions. It's very important that you keep trace of which decisions you make, because maybe right now you're like, super obvious, I decided to remove the zeros, but maybe in 5-6 months, when you are like writing your paper and everything, you're like, okay, what happened 5 months ago. So keeping a note, keeping traceability is very important, because even if they look like obvious decisions to you, having everything documented will just make everyone's life easier. Your life, your supervisor's life, the research in general. From here, you can decide if you're gonna fill gaps, if you're gonna remove incomplete records, if you're gonna, if there's significant errors, if maybe you're gonna pass a filter, what are you gonna do with this? Then it's important that you format the data for consistency. So making sure you have the same timestamps, standardize the units. So for example, could be that your data comes from the US and some data comes from Europe, and then the time will be different if it's going to be month day or day month. So making sure that the dates are in the same format, or maybe part of your data was in Celsius and the other part was in Fahrenheit. So make sure you're using the same units. From there, we're going to look into the quality control measures. Here is, as I said, where we really start putting more sauce into our data. Here is where we can run the statistical checks. So are our values within expected ranges? If there are any anomalies, first you don't say like, okay, I'm going to delete everything. You say, okay, is it reasonable that we are removing these outliers? What is the distribution of my data? Is this making sense? And also, you should never delete stuff without understanding why it occurred. So maybe then you can say, okay, I made the decision to remove this data because it seems that the battery of the measuring machine was faulty. So then it started giving weird values, but then you can justify why are there gaps in your data, and then if you're gonna fill them in, or how your timestamps are gonna look like. So again, if we have well-processed data, this will prevent errors in analysis, and it will also improve the reproducibility of the data itself. Next one. Yep. Yep. Then the file naming convention and format. This seems pretty obvious, but it's very important that we start from the beginning thinking of file naming convention. As Fran said, there's already a lot of resources out there that could give us a good guideline of what the naming conventions can be. Oh, can you? Yeah. But overall, you should follow the best practices for naming. So again, it needs to be something brief and clear. So not measuring in the middle of this with latitude, that doesn't work for anyone. So maybe, you put project, underscore location, underscore date, underscore version, let's say dot, whatever format you're using. So if we think of the Coral example, it could be, I don't know, Coral survey, Belize, dates dot slash version 1 dot CSV. Again, we should think no spaces, but special characters. Usually underscores are the most used. And why is this important? Because if you want to be able to analyze your data later in Python or R or MATLAB, you also need it to be readable for your computer. You should also avoid draft or final. I know that when we're in a rush, we're like, okay, final that I should have sent yesterday, but I sent it today. It's best that we keep versions. So then you can also keep tabs on yourself, like, okay, this was my version from this date, version 2, version 3, and then you can be a little bit more organized. Yeah. And we should choose a file format. It's best to use open file formats because then you can easily share them. So if, for example, I'm using Microsoft Excel to do my data analysis, in the end, that's a page. As much as it's very spread around the world, that is still paid. So maybe instead of saving it in a XSL format, you save it on a CSV. And also very, very important to make sure that when you are changing into formats, so let's say I was working on Excel, then I decided to save it on a CSV, that the data keeps its integrity. So if you're looking at the data on the open format, that it pretty much keeps the same everything that you had with it. Yep. We can go
Okay.
to...
Yes. And so once that you have documented well your the formats for your data and everything is clear, you are going to the analyzing phase of your data. This is where you would draw meaningful insights from the data that you collected after removing outliers, doing all the processing. Um, and this is where you can do statistical analysis, involve different kinds of modeling or visual techniques to, for example, looking at the coral reefs that you were looking at. You can generate a different platform that issue warning if there are different kind of, I don't know, marine heat wave events, for example, and see if it works, if it has meaning, and analyze was your hypothesis from the beginning valid? What kind of conclusion can you start drawing? Um, and see if there are other data that you need, or you need to, as we were saying, this is a very live document, so it happens that you find something while doing the analysis that you didn't consider, and then you go back to a few steps before involving different variables. And to process all the data, you have different kind of programming tools, like Python or MATLAB, for example, for doing data interpretation. The great thing is that, once again, as we are trying to promote data sharing, there's a lot of scripts out there already made by others on how they downloaded the data. And usually through, for example, GitHubs, you can share your script or get some insights from other people, correct your scripts or so on. And this is where it's important to always think, okay, maybe in 6 months I won't understand what kind of processing I was doing, even in the analyzing phase, can I share this? Can I myself read it again? And this ensures traceability and reproducibility of your results, especially if you want to have your data implemented in some kind of platform or repository, and you want it to be shared. There will be validation steps, and if you're not able to document each step through the analyzing phase, this can render your data unusable, which would be a shame. Um, then once you analyze your data, next slide, please. Sorry, can you move to the next slide? Thank you. Yes, so then once you've analyzed everything, you draw your conclusions, you will get to the publishing and sharing phase of your research data lifecycle. Um, so we're really advocating for open data, and often anyway, in research contracts, this is mandated. You will have to render your data open. Sometimes there's an embargo for maybe 6 months or 1 year, time to publish your data and have it locked in before. But often this is kind of a, uh, a request for getting public funding, which makes sense because you're meant to build up knowledge and being able to share it with others, which ensures that the data is accessible, discernible, and properly cited. And as I was saying, then you can either use data from others in certain repositories like Copernicus Marine, Wikio, the AirDAP platform, IbModNet, and you can yourself put in your data, and anyway you will have to provide the metadata and the persistent identifier that are kind of an ID, online ID for your data, for example the DOI, which is very common to get with your data sets, so people are able to find your data uh, more easily, so they don't need to personally come and contact you. And you are also better able to trace where your data is going, which is also important. Um, so all through these steps, you need to make sure that your metadata is always updated, and as Mariana was saying, through all the different steps. Then you will need to keep in mind that to make your data really accessible, you need to think of the fair and care principle that Mariana will talk about in a bit. But first, we need to talk about how you're protecting your data and what kind of access level you wanna give it. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so you can choose with the, for example, the Creative Commons licensing, you can choose to have it open, slightly more restricted. You can, for example, have it open, but people are not able to commercialize the data and make money out of it. And then this goes on until fully restricted, where you want to keep your data. And at the moment, this is a very hot topic because with this exploitation of the deep sea, for example, the IAS, the International Seabed Authority, is trying to we need to make sure that we are getting the right data before any exploitation, which is another topic, of course, but also once we allow, for example, for private companies to do extractions in the deep sea, are they gonna share the data that they're retrieving? Because if they're a private company, they don't have an incentive to share the data, and if you don't make it mandatory to do so, they can just restrict your data, their data, and then we have a loss of the knock-on effect on ecosystems and a whole lot of more more issues that comes with it. But so even on your level or on a bigger scale, it's always important to think about what kind of licensing is around the data, either your own or even the one that you might be using for your own research. And then we go into the next phase. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay, so for the next phase, we have preserving the data. The preservation of the data ensures that the data remains accessible and usable in the long term. So as Frank was mentioning before, we were putting so many resources into obtaining this data, we're trying to make the most of it. So we can have also gain for everybody. As we know, the idea with science is that we can reproduce it, that we can share it, and it's for a common good and knowledge building. For this, we need to think about storing the data in long-term repositories to ensure accessibility. For this, there are a lot of different repositories. Could be that your university has a specific repository for the data, or there are international repositories that you can access as well. Or they can also be per field. So then it's easier for people within your field to search for this data. From there, it's important to choose appropriate file formats. So as I was mentioning, maybe, I did all of my analysis in MATLAB and everything is great there, but then I decide for the data to be accessible to put it on a netcdf format. So that way people can access my data and then I can share my process of analysis if I want on my MATLAB script. This is important because it will keep the longevity, and these formats that are open usually are stable over time. And if we try to avoid proprietary formats that require specific software is the best, because if not, we're really not making this data open, or could be that this software becomes not usable anymore or requires a very specific version of a computer operating system. So it's best that we can have these open formats so it can also last for longer. Then we have to think about the backup strategies. This is something that we mentioned earlier. And one of the important things that you have to set up within your data management plan. It's important to think about, cloud storage, institutional servers, and also if there's going to be a DOI assignment to your data. But it's also good to know how much storage it will occupy, because sometimes in certain repositories, there will be a limit, depending, as Frank was saying, sometimes they're gonna do a check on your data and see if it's cool to go into the repository or not. But also that takes resources. So for us to be able to keep this data, it needs to live in servers and someone has to pay and maintain the servers. So it's important to know how much data you will be producing, not just from the gathering of it, but it could be from the analysis of it as well, and where it will live. Also, it's very important, as mentioned before, that you think of backups while you're working to avoid issues. So does it have to stay somewhere else? It will be open in other repositories? Will it be in servers of the group, or how it will go? Usually it's best if you can store it in multiple locations in case something happens. So have it in the cloud, in institutional servers, or in an external hard drive even, because sometimes, we all get, a bad day and our computer dies, and then you're like, oh, all of my data was there. So to try to avoid those situations, it's best to plan it with time. And then, as mentioned before, metadata documentation. So it's very important that we ensure that the data context is preserved, so people can access it easier, so we know where things came from, when it was gathered. And as I said, it's the nutritional label of your data. So this will give information to you, but also to others within your field or even your research group of how your data is. So we can go to the next. Awesome. So now we have to think about the reusing of the data. If there is relevant data already that can be used, then and if it's not necessary to remeasure, sharing and reusing data will maximize its impacts and will support open science. So before you even think about measuring, it's good to look if that has been measured and if it's useful for you. There's already so much resources put into collecting data and so many amazing platforms that do a great job at keeping this data clean and accessible. So first, let's look at which data we can already use. So we really look into the cycle if there's no necessity to remeasure. From there, it's important to document who collected the data, how it was processed. So then we also have that information that they are providing with their metadata, with their collection methods and everything. So we can know where it came from. From there, it's important to adopt standardized formats and metadata to enhance interoperability. This means that different platforms and disciplines can use this data. So, we have certain oceanographic variables that are used within all fields. So it is very important that it doesn't matter if you're a chemist or an oceanographer or a biologist or a doctor, like that you are able to use this data within your research when it's a common variable as well. And it's very important that you also cite the data sets correctly so you can give credit to the original researchers. So just like papers, data sets also deserve credit because gathering the data, processing it, all of this takes a lot of effort. And also it's very important to know where it came from, and we can credit to give it validity and traceability. If we start losing these little pieces of information, then it's very difficult that if someone wants to reproduce our results or look into it, for them to really have like validity of where this was coming from. And again, we should be supporting open science initiatives to promote transparency and collaboration. So again, if we make the data reusable, it will support transparency, efficiency, and also will help us progress within our science. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the FAIR principles and the ethical considerations, that is CARE. So basically, the FAIR and CARE principles guide responsible and ethical data management. With the FAIR principles, it means that you will follow these principles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your data has to be open. So the FAIR principles are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and the CARE principles are for collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. So we're going to start with the FAIR principles. For the findable, if we click, means that we're going to have unique identifiers, metadata, and indexing. So we are able to find our data. So that means that we have very clear metadata. So within a Google search, someone can say, okay, I want maybe fish population of, I don't know, Indian Ocean. And then people can really access and find your data. Then we have accessible. So open access when possible, authentication when necessary. This ties up with what Fran was saying. If we're able to keep it open access, that is great. But if some authentication is needed, just when it's really necessary. So we can really keep this back and forth of the data being used as much as possible, and we can get as much use from it as possible. Then we have interoperable. So basically for us to use standardized formats and control vocabularies. Usually, as we mentioned, depending on your field of research, there's already formats that you can use or certain standards that you can follow, and simply so it can also be findable for everyone, and we can all put this data together, and it's a little bit easier. And then we have reusable. If we have clear documentation, if we made an amazing data management plan, then we will be able to properly license it and be able to track this data. Then if we go into the care principles were really put together for indigenous data sovereignty. And it really depends on the type of data that you're handling. This really came to be, so we take into consideration indigenous communities' knowledge and also the ethics that come with it. The main principle of this is that we don't want to harm the communities and that we have a collective benefit for them as well. With this, we start with the first, so it should really benefit indigenous communities. Authority to control has to do that indigenous groups should control the access and use. So basically, if they're open the doors of their communities to you, you should be respectful, being able to give them agency towards the data, and they can decide who has rights over their data. Then we have responsibility. That means that we need to respect cultural norms and also the governance structures. This could mean that they are inviting you to their community, and if they're telling you that there's one part that you cannot enter, don't enter, right? So it's important that we are respectful, we are mindful of their culture, and also that we're mindful of the community itself. And then we have to think about the ethics. So the data should be used in a way to support indigenous well-being. So for an example of this could be that maybe we go into the community because we want to measure some biodiversity data, but in exchange, this biodiversity data could also help indigenous groups to help manage the ecosystem, And why all of this is important, or thinking about the authority to control, is if we are providing climate observations, they should be deciding who accesses this data, because there could be a part that maybe has some commercial interest and that could be exploited, and it's best if we can keep the indigenous knowledge relevant, but the community safe as well. So,
So to tie up to the data management best practices that we've shown you today, I think you understand that the data management plan from start to the end is critical for keeping the integrity and accessibility and reusability of your data, which really maximize the funding, the effort that you put in your data that we don't necessarily think about on a local scale. If you're just trying to get a research out, you might overlook sometimes the fact that it can actually help other communities that have similar kind of system or do comparisons, and it's really important to think from the beginning to the end that you standardize the way that you manage your data, and that someone that looks for your data can easily find the information, because it's super common to actually find a paper or something that um, has similar study than yours, and to access the data you really need to get in touch with the person that did the research. Sometimes they're not findable, they're not in this institution. It's really hard to trace, and this is a lot of data loss, and especially if you're working on fundings that last for, I don't know, sometimes 2-3 years. It's a shame not to make the most of it. And as Mariana was saying, it's very important to think about the fair and care principle to keep your data and your methods ethical, and to keep the data open. And this is a really big incentive that I think all institutions are working towards, especially in the context, for example, of the European digital twin that they're creating to be able to share the data and share also local coastal data. Then you really get into smaller and smaller pockets, and sometimes it's really hard to trace. And I know from experience that sometimes it's the metadata is really what keeps you from reusing some of very valuable data. And so to guide you through all the steps, the research data lifecycle is a really good way to think again and again, am I going in the right direction? And as I was saying, there's a lot of information online that you can find for your specific needs, because we're giving you an overview and we can't really dive into too much specifics, because you might be dealing with only biological data, geological data, and and the repositories are very different. The standards are very different. So it's important to find these the cycle that is appropriate to your data, but they are standard. Um, then, of course, keeping the tools that you used and the standard efficient, and allow more collaboration and sharing uh, of your data processing as well. And so to help you with that, because this is a workshop that we first gave for the ECOP Dutch Dutch Nod, we created a checklist, a data management checklist, to help you guide through all the steps, and we will share this document with you after this workshop, to give you a bit of food for thoughts, because obviously a lot of the stuff that we've told you, it makes a lot of sense, but it's very easy to overlook, and it's good to have something that keeps us in check. And then as I was saying, there's a lot of big institutions, or maybe even the research center where you are may have templates that helps you guide, especially specifically for your institution, or even nationwide, to keep they might have different requirements to follow. And so this is coming to the end of the first part of our workshop. So now we're gonna have a short break, and afterwards we'll have an activity that will help you to put in practice what we've told you, and you will see that maybe it feels like it's very general what we're saying, and that we want to you think that it's easy to remember, but this activity will show you that it's very important to keep each step very well coordinated. So because you can really get lost in dealing with your data. And for that, I will leave you with Mariana and Prerana for to guide you through this activity. So Mariana, maybe you want to say a few words about the activity?
Yes, so if we can go into the next slide, so we're gonna do a escape room. Basically, after the small break that we're gonna take, you will be assigned a breakout room at random. Then usually it should take between 45 minutes to 55 minutes to complete. If you finish beforehand, let us know. Prerana and me will be moving a little bit around breakout rooms in case there's any issues. So if you get stuck, we can always help. The escape room does not save your progress. So it's very, very important that you make notes when you solve the puzzles. So I think for the amount of people that we are, probably we'll do like groups of like 4 or 5 people. One person will be in charge of sharing their screen with the escape room. And would be nice that you also assign one person to be taking the notes. So when you solve the puzzles, you have that. So to able to escape, you will have to form a phrase. So very important that you keep tabs on that. And again, don't worry, if you get stuck, we will be able to help. I think maybe we can take like a 7-minute break. So we could be back, like in 7 minutes, in, where I'm at would be like 6:05. And yes, I hope this will be a very nice activity that will really consolidate everything. As Fran mentioned, after the session, we will send you the checklist that we have. And of course, if you have any questions, we will also be sharing the email where you can send us an email. So for now, we'll keep the break short of like 7 minutes. Fran needs to go, but of course, I want to thank her so much for doing this presentation with me. And yeah, hopefully see you in 7 minutes.
Perfect. See you everybody in like a break of 6 to 7
Thank you
minutes.
so much.
Hi everyone. I hope everyone starts coming back.
Yes, I think we have like a good group of 14 participants.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, just quick recap. You will be assigned a breakout room at random. You will have around 55 minutes to complete. If you finish before, let us know. We will be jumping from one breakout room to the other in case you need help. And again, it doesn't save your progress. So one person should be sharing their screen with the escape room and one should be making notes when you solve the puzzles. Now we're gonna make the breakout rooms because we have 14 people. I don't know, shall we do groups of like 2 groups of
2, maybe? 5
Maybe
break rooms of 2 people?
2 to 3 people, yeah.
yeah, maybe we can do 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then one group will be 4 people because
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Should I start the breakout?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we will send the site of the escape room on the chat, so don't worry about it.
Yes. I think everybody should be in a breakout room for now. I think there are 4 rooms.
Yeah, so if everyone can start
Yes.
joining the breakout rooms.
Everyone is joining now.
Yes. Have folks been able to join?
Only room 4, there is one person only.
Oh yes. Can we add them to one
Yeah,
of the rooms?
so I'll move.
Yes, I'm moving. I'm
okay.
moving.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And then we can send in the broadcast message the
The link, you mean?
yes.
Yes. Can somebody help me with the link?
Yes, of course. Let me give me 1 second. Wait.
Mm,
Just 1 second. Okay, I'll send it to you. Let me send it in the chat. Okay, let me close this chat. There we go.
Yeah.
I sent you the link through the chat, and then you can send it on the, or I can send it also on the broadcast.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna start joining the breakout rooms just to see that. So maybe how we divide it is I can do like room 1 and room 2, and you go to room 3.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Let's do that.
Okay, I'll join room 1. Okay, so how did it go for, Katie, Anurias? Hello?
Hi, sorry, I couldn't turn on my microphone. I think we got
ended. Yes, but I think so far, Katie, go ahead. Katie and
I think we got five words. The last one that we just did was planning. We just got that word in time. I think we got all the words, but we didn't put them together in time.
Oh, okay. No, but well done. So in the end, to complete it would be going to the computer, and then the phrase would be good planning helps avoid data horror. So you were basically escaping, so that's perfect. Yeah, I wanna know first, what did you guys think of maybe if we can share the presentation again? Also, I don't want to take too much of your time because we're a little bit over past 2 hours. So if you stay with me 5 more minutes, then we can just close the session. Yeah, so if we go at the end. Yeah, perfect. So I want to ask, so anything during the game, including your struggles or mistakes, prompt you to think about why or how we should do research data management? Like someone would like to comment about it?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think especially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go on, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think especially in the way that structure is very important because everything was very scattered and not standardized. So I could definitely see how that is, how that impacts your data and how to find it also.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Then, Christian.
What made me think a lot was one question about the licensing. So if you don't license something that gives you the right to do everything with the data, whatever you wish, apparently that's false. So that to me was interesting, and also how many different steps to consider along the line. So basically, you really have to plan a vacation at the IT department because there's so many legal aspects and data safety and storage and do. So this really extends far beyond, hello, I use an external hard drive to secure data. That was really, really good. So something to consider, because I didn't have, regarding the dimension of the necessities, I sure did not have that on screen.
Yes, I think that's a really good point to discuss, right? Because all of us can have different ways that we organize ourselves when working with our data and what makes sense to us. But the fact that we can have something standardized really help us being able to share that data, even with ourselves in the future. Like if you're revisiting a project or a research question that you had before, being able to really trace all the decisions that you made within that data frame, and also really look into the small details. As Fran was saying right now with the banning of this deep sea mining is one of the big hot topics of the moment, right? Of how that data is going to be managed and if it has commercial potential or not, and who can use that data and who shouldn't be using that data for, a financial purpose. So that's why it's very important to consider. And yeah, I think, unless someone else would like to comment in the second question, that is, while you were playing the game, did you see any parallels between the way you organize your team and the different roles in the research process? I think maybe because we were smaller groups, it's not so easy to see those roles, but sometimes it's good to see that maybe someone is really keeping track of the documentation, right? If someone is doing the notes, you can see who's keeping track of the documentation. Also, how this is always a collaborative process, and how a data management plan, it's always a live document where multiple people are also helping you with this. And yeah, I hope you guys like the activity. I think it's a good way to really try to put together these concepts that somehow can be boring or can be something that you have to think about, but it's important in the long run. And as we mentioned before, if we go to the next slide. Yeah, we just want to thank you for attending this workshop. If you have any questions, you can always send us an email to, the official Netherlands ECOP Dutch Node email, and we also have a Gmail attached to it. And at the end of this session, we will also provide you with a checklist that we have made. So to help you with this data management plan. So I don't know if maybe if anyone has it on hand, maybe we can share it on the screen, like this PDF, just so people can see what is this about. Because I don't know if I can share my screen. Yeah, I think I can share my screen. Okay. Okay, so sure. So I'll share it with you. So basically, how this looks like, it's a little checklist that we've made that we hope is going to be useful. Basically has an overview of questions that are important for you to ask to be able to write your data management plan. So a little bit of like, what's the overview of your project? What's the overview of your data set? So you can say, yeah, it's observational, experimental, simulated, how the data will be generated, is there existing ones and which ones, the data formats that you want to use, the versions and stability of your data, how you're gonna organize it, the backups, the access, technical requirements for the reusing, the archiving and preservation, compliance and legal considerations. And here we also have some additional sources that we hope are useful for you. So here we have a couple of tools. So we have open software that can help getting this data and also managing it. As Fran was mentioning, there's already a lot of scripts out there that can help you download your data automatically so you don't have to do everything by hand. If you maybe are doing a long period, or maybe your data is sampled every 30 seconds and then your data set is pretty big and you want to download data, like one chunk at a time. Then we also have a little bit more about FAIR principles, a little bit more about the research data lifecycle as well. Here is a section with some other templates and guidelines that can be useful. And here I think is one of the parts that we try to put as much variation as possible, but of course there's a lot of repositories out there because also there are specific repositories for different fields. But R3 data is very useful because it gives you the registry of the research data repositories for all subjects. But there's a couple repositories that are really well put together, very well maintained. One of them is the European Union Open Research Repository. We also have, if you work on indigenous communities, the Global Indigenous Data Alliance is a great source. And the UNESCO has the IODE, that is International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange. That is also a great resource. There's also the Ocean Best Practices. So if you are unsure on what could be the best practices and the ways that go in your field, it can help you search by field. So formats, type, how they put the metadata together, stuff like that. Of course, we have the NOAA World Ocean Database. And something important is OBIS, is the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. But it's important to clarify here that OBIS also has per country or per region. So let's say that maybe you want to work with data from Colombia. There will be a specific OBIS for Colombia or a specific OBIS for Brazil, I've seen as well. So that's really nice because then you can even go more specific if you want. Fran mentioned IBONDINET, and we have a couple more. We have one from Chile, the Integrated Marine Observing System, Japan, South Africa. So This resource will be sent to you. And yeah, I really hope this is very useful for you, that you enjoy the workshop. Again, if you have any questions, there's any way that we can help, you can always send us an email. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
I would have a last. I can wait until you stop the recording.
Thank you so much, Mariana and Fran. I just have a quick question. The data management template, I'm somehow unable to share it on the chat, the PDF. If
Let
there's
me see if I can send it, and if not, we have the list of participants, and we can also
Perfect.
send by email, right?
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this webinar, and this was so informative. So thank you, Mariana and Fran.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.